Perfect. So I'll still keep admitting people into the lobby, but we've got quite a lot that we need to cover tonight. Quite a lot of exciting things that we need to cover. So we'll make a start now. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really, really appreciate it. My name is Malika. I'm from Success at School, and I am just one of your hosts this evening. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on all the bursaries, scholarships, and financial support on offer at the British Army. They are going to be taking you through a little presentation that they've prepared and answering all of the questions that you do have. Thank you so much to everyone who already submitted a question. I've made a note of all of that, and we will be addressing them towards the end of the webinar for the last 15 minutes. But we really want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions throughout, please post them in the chat. Otherwise, that is more than enough from me. I'm going to pass it on to the wonderful team here at the British Army, and they're going to walk you through their presentation tonight.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining. We'll all just introduce ourselves before we kick off. My name's Georgina. I'm one of the recruiters for if you would like to join as an army officer. I'm based in Yorkshire, so if you are from somewhere up north, you might have me as your recruiter. And I will pass on to Mark now.
Thanks, G. Hi everyone, I'm Mark. Similar to Georgina, our main role is recruiting for the army. I'm sort of based in the Midlands. Previous to this, I am career served in the army, approaching 30 years as well. So we've got that both sides to it as well, and we've got Kate with us as well.
Hi everyone, so my name's Kate. I'm one of the professionally qualified recruiters. I look after roles including doctors, dentists, vets, pharmacists, nurses, chaplains and lawyers. I'm based in the south of the country, so if you're based there, you'll probably have me as your recruiter.
Fab. So now we've all introduced ourselves, we will get going. Amy, could we have the first slide, please? Thank you. Fab. So objectives of the presentation tonight. So first of all, we want to give you a bit of an overview of what you need to do if you want to become an army officer. Importantly, we'll look at the application process. We'll talk about the eligibility process as well. And we are also, most importantly, wanting to highlight any financial support that we can offer to anyone who is looking to join the army as an officer. So we'll cover things like sixth form scholarships and bursaries, and we'll also look at the professionally qualified bursaries as well. As Malik has already mentioned, if anyone has any questions as we're going through, please do pop them in the chat. The one thing I just want to stress, just because I've noticed something pop in the chat already, is that we unfortunately cannot answer any sort of specific medical queries. But if you do have any questions, we can talk about the medical process in general. If we could go to the next slide, please, Amy. So what do we look for in army officers? These are just some of the things that we are looking for when you go to Army Officer Selection Board. The one I want to highlight most here is the second one down, which is leadership potential. And that potential is the key word. We are not necessarily looking for you to be the finished article and for you to, be an Iron Man or absolute athlete. We are looking for people who sort of tick some of these boxes, but also have the potential to be a future leader. We look for these things across various selection methods, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But if you think that you tick some of these boxes, then joining as an army officer might be something that is worth looking at. Could we go to the next slide, please, Amy? Fab. I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to talk in a little bit of detail about some of the financial awards.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. We are going to try and keep this as generic as possible this evening as well. Now, hopefully, because there's a whole raft of audience from parents, gatekeepers, through to potential guys, girls who may be looking to join. So I'll try and keep this fairly generic. So the scholarship scheme, the Army Officer Scholarship Scheme, this is the earliest time or age that somebody can apply to join the Army as an officer. So, there's that first statement there, the opening line of that statement is Army scholars. The Army does want their scholars to go on to university. So it's that word expected. The vast majority of scholars who are go on the scheme who are awarded a scholarship do go on to university, but there is them little small number that decide against it. So for those guys and girls in the beginning of sixth form, we'll get onto when to apply. It says down the bottom when to apply. It's that beginning of sixth form. So year 12, lower 6, higher in Scotland. So it's that first year. If you are awarded a scholarship, you then hopefully go on to university, and you'll then be awarded a bursary, an army undergraduate bursary, with the minimum payment of that working out at £6,000 over a 3-year degree. Going down to the bottom bit of when to apply, I've already said that first year of A levels or equivalents. One of the criteria, because of different around the different countries there's when guys and girls will get into that sixth form, you have to be under 18 on the 1st of August, the year that you go to board. So again, if you're still doing your GCSEs, or if you've got your GCSEs coming up this year, it's too early, so it would be next year. But it's if you've just started your A levels or equivalents, that's the time to apply now. Next slide, please, Amy. We've gone through that. That's the sort of who's eligible, when to apply, but it is strong academics. The Army is looking for those guys and girls who are slightly above average. Let's say that, who's done well at their GCSEs. The same sort of criteria applies for nationality and residency, and the qualifications there. It says it down there. The ALICE points. If you're not up to date with what ALICE points is, if you get a 8 in GCSE maths, that doesn't necessarily give you an 8 ALICE points, but ultimately I would say that the average GCSE scores is probably the 6s and above, is what's needed to those top 7 GCSEs, and as it says there, a minimum of 4 in English language, maths, and then either a science or a foreign language. If you've dropped any of those, i.e. a 3 in maths, you will not be eligible for the scholarship scheme. There is no waiver given on this, maybe later on in life, but not for this one. So just bear that in mind. And then likewise for Scottish candidates, 37 ALICE points from the top 7 subjects there. So again, if you're not sure how many ALICE points that you got, but you think, yeah, I'm there or thereabouts, our advice is apply. Let the eligibility team actually work it out for you. What I will say is for the scholarship scheme, those 40 ALICE points is slightly higher than what we call direct entry candidates, those that are already at university, let's say. It is slightly higher than what they need. So it goes back to we are after that sort of high, strong academic type guys and girls. Next slide, please, Amy. Mention it there, so it's not just about the scholarship scheme. Although the scholarship scheme does give you an entry into Sandhurst as an Army officer, there is a little bit of financial support. You then go on to university, and then this is where there's some, you can see some of the figures on the screen there, some serious money starts coming into it. So if you're awarded a scholarship, that automatically awards you the standard bursary. So you see there, up to £7,000 over the course of, that's over a 4-year course, normally £6,000 over a 3-year course. If you've done well on your A levels, a minimum of ABB, in your 2nd year onwards, you can then start applying for the enhanced bursary. And it's again, potentially up to £24,000 while you're at university. And then the one on the left-hand side there, the really good one there, the STEM bursaries. If anybody is looking at going to university to study a STEM-based degree, again, we get asked all the time, will this course be allowed under the STEM bursary? Our advice is, at the time, ask us, because we'll just go back to the different regiments or corps and actually ask them, because that's constantly changing. But normally, anything STEM-based will be on the list somewhere. And the way that works is very basically 2 payments made up. The first payment of £9,250, which lo and behold is the cost of an educational year at university, plus an additional bursary of £5,000 paid to a candidate each year. You know, again, you have to have passed main board, be selected, have a place to go to at Sandhurst. So it's not something, you don't apply for a bursary, you apply for the army first, get accepted, then you apply for a bursary. So a little bit of a very quick overview that there is some really good cash available there. I think the next slide is for Kate.
Fab, thank you. Yes, so we do have a range of medical bursaries available. These are for students that want to join us as a doctor, a dentist, a vet, pharmacist, adult nurse, or a mental health nurse as well. As you can see on the slide, we've got different amounts for the bursaries. The highest there being our doctors and our dentists. We can get up to £75,000 as the bursary. Now we have 3-year and 2-year bursaries available, and you'll need to make an application at the end of your first year of your degree, whether that's your medicine degree, your dentist degree, your veterinary degree, or your pharmacist degree. The difference, though, is for our adult nurses and our mental health nurses. As long as you've got your unconditional place at university to study that degree, you can apply for one of our bursaries, and if successful, you'll be awarded a 3-year bursary. The team will go on to the application later in the presentation. It will differ slightly for our professionally qualified candidates that are applying for these bursaries, as we will ask for your CV and a cover letter. That will be checked by the relevant CAP badge that you want to join. And also we do have a bit of an arm selection board once you pass your main board as well. If you are successful in gaining one of the bursaries, we will leave you alone to finish your studies and of course work very hard to get your degree. But we will have a team that will check in with you sort of once a year to make sure you're still at university and of course you're still doing well. Once you've completed your degree, the training will then differ depending on the job that you're choosing to do. So for example, if you're joining us as a medical officer, one of our doctors, you will do your junior doctor training with us at one of our joint hospital groups. So your FY1 and your FY2 is completed with us in the army prior to you going to Sandhurst. Similar with our dentists and our vets that also do a year in industry in the army as well. The difference is with our nurses, you'll go to Sandhurst first for your 9 weeks commissioning course short, and then you will start your 12-month preceptorship with us in the army at one of our joint hospital groups as well. You can also go off to specialise, our doctors and our nurses, you can go off to specialise once you are in, but that will depend on what the army do need at that particular time. Over to you.
Thanks, Kate. Fab. So now we've talked about the things that we can offer you. I'm just going to go through the entry requirements and the application process. So I know Mark's already mentioned the entry requirements if you want to join as a scholar, but in general, for any regular officer role, you will need to be between 17 years and 9 months when you apply, and you must be under the age of 30 when you start Sandhurst. That is slightly different for some of our professionally qualified roles, but for regular officer roles, so for all those roles that you can get the standard, enhanced and the STEM bursaries, that is the age range. You will need to hold 72 UCAS points. So from your A-levels, that is about 3 Ds at A-level or equivalent. Most A-levels and BTECs give you the UCAS points that you need, but again, when you apply, our eligibility team will check that. And again, with those ALICE points, you'll need to hold 35 ALICE points to join as a regular officer. So that's slightly lower than the scholarship requirements. There is on the Army website, if you just put into Google Army ALICE points, it will tell you exactly how many ALICE points each of your GCSEs have been allocated. So that's an easy way to work it out. The other entry requirement is residency. You must be a UK, Republic of Ireland or a Commonwealth citizen, and you must hold at least 3 years residency in the UK. So they are the basics. There are other things that we look for in terms of medical eligibility, things like criminal convictions and tattoos and piercings, but all of those things are looked at on a case-by-case basis when you apply. Next slide, please, Amy. Okay. So bear with me, this is probably going to be a bit boring, but I'm just going to go through what the application process looks like just to give you an idea. So all of your initial applications will need to take place online. The initial application probably takes 15 to 20 minutes. Just fill out some basic forms about yourself, things like where you've been to school, where you live, and fill out a basic medical questionnaire. We will then get in touch with you and and once we've checked all your initial eligibility, we will send you over some medical forms that we need to get back from your GP. So we're basically requesting your primary healthcare record, which is your full medical history from your GP. Once we have that back from your doctor, we will then have a look at it. And once you've passed that initial medical scrutiny, we can move you on to the next stage. I will say that that medical process can be one of the most frustrating parts. Some GPs are better than others. So if you are kind of stuck in that process, please do pester your GP. Some GPs get it back quickly. Some like to take their time. So once you pass that initial medical scrutiny, you'll be invited for a video interview with myself or one of my colleagues, which normally lasts about 30 to 45 minutes. During that initial interview, what we will do is talk you through the application process, make sure you're happy with all the next steps, and we will also go through some sort of basic interview questions. We would ideally like you to have done a little bit of research to know which parts of the army you're potentially interested in and to have some sort of idea about the application process and what the role and responsibilities of a young officer are. But it is not super formal. We are not selecting you at this point. You will also be invited to a face-to-face medical at one of our selection centres. So they take place around the country and you'll be sent to the one that is closest to where you live. That face-to-face medical is sort of things like eyesight, hearing, colour perception. The doctors will have all your medical notes with them and they will ask you a series of questions about your medical history. Once you've passed that face-to-face medical, that's when we can start sending you to our Army Officer Selection Board. That is AOSB, that's what that stands for. We split Army Officer Selection Board into two parts, briefing and main board. So briefing is the first part of selection, has two aims to it. So firstly, it's used as a selection tool by us to make sure that you are eligible to move forward to main board. But it is also, like any interview, it's a two-way process. It is there to make sure that you like what you see and that you want to become an army officer. So during briefing, you'll be there sort of Monday morning to Tuesday lunchtime, and you will do some fitness, you'll do some cognitive testing, you'll do some team tasks, current affairs discussions, and you will also have a briefing on how to do something called a planning exercise. Now, as I said, briefing is partly there to prepare you for main board. So you do need to prepare, you do need to make sure that you can meet the basic fitness requirements. If you have a look on the Army website, you'll be able to see in detail the fitness requirements, but you will have to do a bleep test to level 8.7. You will have to do a medicine ball throw. So it's a 4 kilogram medicine ball and you will need to throw that at least 3.1 meters. And you will also have to do something called a mid-thigh pull and do at least 76 kilos in that. You will receive a category based on your performance after your time at briefing. That category determines when or if you can move forward to main board. I'm not going to go through those categories in detail, but depending on what you get will depend on when you go to main board. Army Officer Selection Board main board is the main part of selection, and that is the thing that can give you that ticket to go to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst and also that ticket to applying for your bursaries. So Army Officer Selection Board main board is a 3.5 day selection. You'll be there Tuesday till Friday. You'll repeat quite a few of the same things that you've done at briefing, such as your fitness, your cognitive testing, and your current affairs discussions and team tasks. But at main board, you will have the opportunity to also do a lecturette, so a 5-minute talk on a subject of your choosing. You will also do a current affairs essay. You will have 3 in-depth interviews, and you will also do some command tasks where you are the person leading the team tasks outside, and you will also do a planning exercise in further detail. You, after main board, will either receive the result of selected or not selected. So if you are selected, that means that you can go ahead and apply for the bursaries, or you can start at Sandhurst at any point within the next 5 years, as long as it's before your 30th birthday. If you are not selected, you do have another chance to go back to main board, but you only get 2 chances. Something I didn't mention is the officer familiarisation visits. So you will get a couple of opportunities to go and visit different parts of the army. So you can do one after briefing and one after main board. This is a chance for you to make sure that you have done a bit of research and that you know which part of the army you want to join. You will have the opportunity when you're at Sandhurst as well to go on further visits. So don't panic if you can't get to see the one that you want to see between briefing and starting at Sandhurst. Before you start at Sandhurst, you will have to do a 3-day Sandhurst preparation course. And this is basically where you'll get some kit issued, so things like boots and stuff, so that you can wear those in. You will have a re-fitness test and a re-medical. As I mentioned previously, you might do selection board and then not join for 4 years. So we need to make sure that you're still medically and physically fit. And you'll also have like a series of lectures and a chance to meet with everyone who is on your intake. After that, you will go on to do your officer training at Sandhurst. So we have 3 intakes every year, every January, May and September. The officer training course is 42 weeks. It is split into 3 terms. The first term is your junior term. That is where you are learning your basic soldiering skills. So that's learning how to look after yourself. So learning things like weapons handling, drill, do a lot of physical fitness in this term. You'll then go off on a bit of annual leave and you will come back into your intermediate term. This is where the focus shifts a little bit from looking after yourself to looking after others. And the academic elements of the course do ramp up in this term. So you'll be doing more lectures and seminars. And as I say, focus shifts onto more responsibility. Again, you'll go off on a bit of annual leave and you'll come back into your final term, so your senior term. This is where you're consolidating everything that you've learned in the first 2 terms and putting them together. And again, more and more responsibility is given to you and the exercises that you go on will get more and more complex. It is also in this final term that you pick which part of the army you want to join. So you will go through an interview process with the different corps and regiments, known as regimental selection boards, and you will then find out which part of the army you will be joining after you finish Sandhurst. And it's not listed on this slide, but after you've finished your training at Sandhurst and you've commissioned as a regular officer, you will then go on to do your specific to arms training with whichever part of the army you've joined before you start your first job. I'm sure there's probably going to be loads and loads of questions about the application process, so we can answer those. As Kate has already mentioned, and I think Mark already mentioned, that the processes look slightly different for the scholarship and for the professionally qualified route. Broadly speaking, the initial part is the same in terms of the application, the medical forms. It's the bits in between that look slightly different. There is a slightly different selection board for the scholarship and for the professionally qualified routes. But broadly speaking, we're looking for the same things: physical fitness, intellectual potential, and looking at your personality as well. Next slide, please, Amy. Fab. We're coming to the end of our presentation now. Got through that quicker than we thought we would, but that's good because it leaves plenty of time for us to be able to answer all of your questions. So this is quite a good one to leave up just for a minute or two. If you want to take a photo of it, you can have a look and see which of us will be your recruiter if you applied. So these are, broadly speaking, the areas that we all cover. Please do feel free to get in contact with anyone if you do have any further questions. I will hand back to you now. Thank you.
Perfect. So we've got quite a lot of time to do questions, which is good. We've got about 15 or so minutes. So let's start off with, does the application process differ if you're doing some sort of scholarship process?
Yeah, I'll jump on that one. Amy, can you just go back to the worm, please? Yeah. Georgina mentioned it. So no matter what part are we looking at, so applying online all the way through to face-to-face medical, give or take, that's the same. It's those bits that change from AOSB briefing through to sort of regimental core interviews. That's where it changes. Because I did see a question pop up specifically for scholarship. for those that's applied for as a scholar this year, and I believe the question did come from somebody that's applied, I sort of recognise the name. I would do something very similar to this as part of the nurture bit, and you'll see the differences there. But on that application process there, instead of doing AOSB briefing and then main board, the scholars will just do one selection, and that's pretty similar for those that are professionally qualified officer as well. So beginning the same, towards the end quite similar. It's that bit in the middle which is slightly different. Hopefully that explains it.
Perfect. Yes, that does. I think we're all good there. And then we've had a question from someone prior to the webinar, and that is, I'm really interested in the army, but is there any way that I can visit, gain some work experience, have some experience for a day, a week, a month, perhaps?
There are sort of various opportunities to have visits. We hold every year down at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. We have 3 insight days a year. So this is a really good opportunity. If you'd like to see what it's like to become an army officer, you can go look around Sandhurst. You can bring parents or guardians or friends with you, and you can get a feel for what it will be like to have your training there. So the next one of those is taking place on the 16th of November, and you can sign up for that online. We will be running one, a mini one up north in January. Applications for that haven't opened yet, but they will be later on in the year. So that's a really good opportunity to go and see what it's like to become an army officer. We also have, sorry, go on.
No,
I was just going to mention that we also have pre-recorded webinars as well that you can have a look at, you know, various things like diversity through leadership and looking at different various parts of the army.
And with that, is there some sort of application process that needs to happen? Is it for specific year groups?
No, there are just you would need to be, I believe, is it 16 plus, Mark?
16 plus for the visit,
yeah. But as long as you're 16 plus, that is absolutely fine.
I'll just jump in slightly more there as well. That's very much officer specific, which is obviously what we're talking about there. If there's any younger audience members or any parents that's got younger children that's wanting to go on, I want to say year 10 can actually do a work experience sort of residential course, but that's all the details on the website there, but that's more looking at the soldier route there. So there is that bit, but for us, the insight day at Sandhurst.
Fab. And then we've got quite a few questions actually about sort of long-term career progression. So what happens after graduation? What does a long-term career look like?
Do you want me to take, Jake? It's what a long-term career looks like is different for every person. I'm not trying to slope my shoulders here. It absolutely is different. As an army officer, once somebody commissions, the day they commission, they'll commission as what we call a second lieutenant. Just about every cap badge in the army, you will stay at that rank for the next 12 months. You will then be promoted to lieutenant. Slight variations, but that is then for the next 2 years. So first year in the army, you are at the the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. You commission as a second lieutenant, spend a year as a second lieutenant, promoted to lieutenant, spend 2 years as a lieutenant, then promoted to captain. So that's all pretty much time served as an officer. You're then looking to spend probably a minimum of 6 years as a captain. You're then in competition. I don't like the word competition, but that's exactly what you are with your peer group. You are then promoted from captain to major on merit, and indeed from major to lieutenant colonel to brigadier. Before you know it, you're running the army several years later. So that first bit, what I'd say to everybody is concentrate on that sort of first 3 years, 4 years as a career, as an army officer. What will come later will make a lot more sense once you are serving.
Perfect. And then we've got quite a few questions as to when should students actually apply. So we've got quite a few who are in year 12, quite a few in year 13. Should it be that they have achieved their grades? I know you sort of mentioned it, but if we could just touch on that one more time, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so if you're looking to apply for the sixth form scholarship, then you need to apply in year 12 between September and March. So that is just for the sixth form scholarship. If you are looking to apply as a regular officer or for the bursaries, but not the sixth form scholarship, you would need to apply from the age of 17 years and 9 months. If you're still in sixth form and you're wanting to apply as a regular officer or the bursaries, you can apply with your predicted grades. You can go through most of the application process, but you would just need to wait until you have your actual grades to be able to attend main board. But you can absolutely apply with predicted grades.
Perfect. Amy, I'm not sure if it'd be possible for you to go back to the slide that had sort of the entry requirements. I think there was like a citizenship part of that because we've got quite a few the residency. For all of you guys that are asking questions about residency, it's on this slide, so you can sort of have a look and relate it to your own personal circumstance. And sort of Mark and Georgina, if there are any websites or anything that we can redirect students to, or if it's just sort of on your website, I think I'll just pop that in the chat for them.
There is sort of a on the website there is a nationality and residency section, but what I would say is if you're unsure, submit an application and our initial eligibility team will take a look at your personal circumstances and they will make a decision. There are obviously everyone's got slightly different nationality and residency pasts, so it's worth submitting that application and getting our team to have a look at it.
Perfect, thank you. And then if I just go through some more questions. Sort of with that as well, if a student does apply and sort of gets rejected at a certain part, but this is definitely a career path that they want to go down, will they get feedback or sort of know at which stage they were unsuccessful to sort of go forward with an application next time?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, at any one stage, well, once they get through that initial eligibility, there'll be two people helping you and guiding you through the process. There'll be one of us in the regional officer recruiting team and also what we call a candidate support manager. So the candidate support manager is there more for the process, you know, getting your bits there, but all the feedback, we will do that feedback. So if you've been to selection, we will get sent the report and it will say if you've hit the standard or not. It won't tell you how to pass next time. It will just tell you what's fallen short on, and then it's reading between the lines. It could be, you know, we could then give some advice. Again, we won't tell you how to pass next time because the last thing that we want is, but Georgina said, you know, so it's very much, we'll point out what the shortfallings are or the perceived shortcomings are, and then we can have a chat there. So, but there will always be feedback along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would be super helpful for them as well. This one is for Kate, and it's about sort of the medicine side of things. Is there any way a student can prepare ahead of their application?
Good question. I think I would just say apply if you are interested in, joining as a doctor. If you're on your, at university doing your medicine degree, and you finish the first year, definitely apply. Give it a go and go from there. There's something more you can really do. Obviously, you need to have the motivations. It can't just be about the money. Obviously, the bursary is a fantastic amount, but it's got to be more than just money. You've got to have the passion. You've got to want to be able to do this in the army.
And with that, are there any sort of required grades, be it in your first year or sort of A-level, GCSE?
No, because we look at candidates that are already doing their degree. Your CV and cover letter will be checked over by that CAP badge. It's actually down to them to decide if they will take you further in the application. So it'll be on a case-by-case basis what they're looking for.
Fab. This is quite an interesting question that has come in as well, and it is in terms of the different pathways that the army offers. Say I was initially interested in sort of going down the army officer route, what would happen if I was interested in music, for example? Is there something I can pursue on the side or sort of going forward? How does that sort of work?
So there's sort of two ways to look at this in terms of, hobbies and interests, and soldier versus officer. So I'll tackle sort of hobbies and interests first. If you're interested in music and you want to do that alongside your job as an army officer, that is absolutely something that you can do. Same goes with any sort of sport or adventurous training or anything else that you want to do. Pretty much any of those sort of things that you want to do in the army, you'll be able to do it alongside your job. And actually, you'll probably have a lot more time to be able to do those kinds of things in the army than you would in other civilian careers. The other thing to have a think about is soldier versus officer. So music is one of those funny ones. You cannot join as a musician officer in the army. You can only join as a musician soldier. So the difference between soldier and officer, soldiers are our kind of hands-on, practical, technical experts. They're people who are specialists in their field, whereas officers are trained and selected as leaders and managers. So that is the reason we can only join as a soldier musician. I should also mention that we do have a music bursary as well that wasn't listed on that slide because we're sort of specifically talking about officer today. But if you want to join as a musician in the army, we do have a music bursary which covers basically your tuition fees. I hope that's answered that question.
Yes, thank you. No, it was quite a complicated question, so thank you, appreciated. We're getting quite a few questions about Sandhurst specifically. So the first one I'm going to ping to Kate, and that is if they're applying, sort of offered that medical bursary whilst at medical school, do they have to go through that 42-week training?
No, it's slightly different. So if you are obviously going for your medicine degree at university, you're offered a bursary to join us as a medical officer. Once you finish your degree, you would then do your 2-year foundation training with us in the army, and you'd only go to Sandhurst for 9 weeks on a 9-week commissioning course short. Reason being, you are joining the army as a particular trade, i.e. that doctor, and therefore they haven't got to teach you how to become a doctor, but they've got to teach you how to be in the military, how to be an officer, your military skills and drills, and therefore it's a smaller course, a 9-week commissioning course short instead.
Fab. And then another question that we've got about Sandhurst is just sort of the clarification as to when it happens. Is this before degree, after sixth form? When does that sort of period happen?
Whenever's right for the candidate is the answer. You have to be a minimum of 18 to start at Sandhurst, so it will always be post A levels, because part of that entry requirements, as it says on the slide there, you need to hold those 72 UCAS points, which you will get from your A levels. So it'll always be post A levels or equivalent. So that's the earliest. If you decide to go to university, because you still apply for the army, when you're still doing your A levels, hopefully get accepted to go into Sandhurst. And as Georgina mentioned, that pass is valid for the next 5 years, because actually we want guys and girls to go to Sandhurst when they are the best version of themselves. And I know plenty of 18-year-olds will say I'm the best version of me right now at 18, and I'm not saying that they're not. But when they start looking back on themselves a year, 2 years, 3 years later, after a degree, after a gap year, after whatever it may be, they'll be more worldly wise, let's say. So that's when you go to Sandhurst. That's when you start your first day in the army, is when it's right for you. So it could be before going to uni. You could do a degree in service, depending on what job you're going to do. Certainly professionally qualified, as Kate said, you'll do all your qualifications first and then go to Sandhurst. For direct entry officers, the vast majority will go to, if they are going to uni, will do that before going to Sandhurst. But there is no right or wrong. Have to be a minimum of 18, and as we said there earlier, at Sandhurst before your 30th birthday.
Fab, thank you. Hopefully that answers quite a few questions that kept popping up in the chat. So you've got about 5 minutes or so, and there's 2 questions that I think are really, really good for us to sort of end on. Just so everyone is aware, I will, and I have made a note of every single question that you guys have popped into the chat, and I'll be sharing this with the team, and I will also share all of these answers with you as soon as we get them, so you have it for your reference, and hopefully your question will be answered. But we've heard the term just apply quite a lot, which is really, really lovely and a really positive attitude. That's what I'm definitely sort of taking away from this webinar. But if I could just have something small from from each of you as to what advice would you give for someone to for when they've just joined. So not so much when they're applying, but for when they've just joined, what's a bit of advice that you could give to them?
I would say sort of when you're in your sort of first couple of years of joining, take every single opportunity that is given to you. You're going to have so many opportunities to do things like sports, adventurous training, further qualifications. Take everything that they're offering. The Army offers such a wide range of things. So definitely get stuck in and get involved in as much as you can.
This is an amazing question, and it's so hard to picture one thing, that one bit of advice. But whenever I meet up with young guys or girls that I've assisted through the program, and they've got to Sandhurst, they come out the other end, I always say to them, remember why you've done this. Remember why you've applied. You know, yes, it's great taking all the opportunities, but ultimately joining the Army as an officer is a huge privilege. You know, so to command and lead soldiers, that is the ultimate why you have applied. So, you know, looking after your soldiers, bringing those guys and girls on, because without no soldiers, there is no Army. So it's, I would always say, remember why you applied in the first place.
Gosh, you both covered a lot of that, so I don't know what else is left to say. Yeah, really echo both both points there. Enjoy it, absorb it all. Remember why you, like you say, you've applied. Say yes to everything, and just enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. Love that. And Mark, that actually really ties in very nicely with sort of the last question I have. And it's at the end of the day, you're all people and you've all got your why and you've all got your reason as to why you've sort of joined. And there's so many different elements of what you guys do and so much different knowledge that you guys have. Why have you sort of specifically, the three of you, chosen to be so passionate about the British Army and this be your career pathway? Apologies for putting you on the spot there, but something quite short, just to sort of tie us off and
Let
give
Mark
some friendly
go first on this
faces.
Well,
one.
I was going to say I'll jump on last on this one. I think it'll make sense for me to go last on this.
All right, I'll go first. I mean, I have no experience with the Army prior to doing this job. I mean, I did CCF at school, but that was it. I have worked in recruitment before, working with the Army, and it was a nice for me, a combination of combining recruitment with something that I feel quite proud to recruit for. I think it is something that's really worthy. I think it's really important that we have our armed forces. And I really enjoy working with the Army, and I find it really interesting. There's been so many different things that we've had opportunities to see. We've been able to go on visits and see different parts of the Army and do all sorts of different stuff. So that's kind of why I started this job.
Yeah, very similar recruitment background prior to recruiting, especially professionally qualified roles in the Army. I think just the opportunities that I can give candidates and speaking to these amazing candidates that are going through all the different kind of medical degrees and things like that, and you know what they're going to go off to do and help and support. I just think it's such a rewarding job role. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, and mine's going to be slightly different. You know, as I said there, I served quite a fair amount of time. I joined the Army at 16, so the eagle-eyed amongst you there to see, well, he wasn't 18, so I did join as a soldier. I knew probably from the age of 13 that I wanted to be in the Army. I joined at 16 because that was the earliest I could join. I just wanted to put a uniform on, crawl through in the mud, just do everything that's great. You know, go and play sports, travel the world, and all them bits. I had no idea how long I was going to spend in the Army. And then, you know, I kept on going until basically my contracts ended. My last posting, my last job in the Army was in Army recruiting. I'd never thought about it before when I was serving. I sort of last post, I got offered it and I thought, oh, it's close to where I want to settle. So I did that sort of my last 5 years of serving, and it just felt right that I could take the uniform off, put a suit on, and carried on doing exactly what I was doing at the end of service. And I honestly feel that I've never left the Army. You know, I just wear a different uniform for work each day, and I still have all the banter, still have all the fun with those that are serving.
Gosh, those are some lovely answers to close on. I hope everyone is feeling quite inspired and is walking away with this just apply mentality. But that will sort of conclude our webinar for today. I know there was a bunch of questions that we didn't get round to answering, but just so everyone is aware, we do actually have a second webinar coming up in November time. So I've just popped the link for that in case it's of interest to anyone and you want to come along and hear some more. But thank you so much for your time. We have recorded this webinar and it will be shared with you tomorrow morning alongside a survey. And once these questions are all answered, we'll also get that to you. But a massive thank you to firstly the team and secondly to every one of you who attended. It wouldn't be possible without all of you. And thank you so much for all the insightful questions that you posted in the chat. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your evening. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.